Hello friends, imagine this. The moment someone passes away, their bank can freeze that account almost overnight. And if the right paperwork isn't filed, the family gets locked out of money they desperately need for funeral costs, bills, everything. Nobody tells you this until it's already happening to you. And here's the part that really gets me. There's actually one simple, completely free form that can stop this whole mess before it starts. But almost no one knows it exists, and the banks definitely aren't going to bring it up. I'm John, and here on John Retires, we dig into exactly these kinds of hidden traps in Social Security and retirement planning that catch families off guard when they're already grieving. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what this form is, who needs to file it, and the small mistake thousands of people make that keeps their account frozen for weeks. So tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments, I love seeing that. Now stick around till the end because this next part could save your family a massive headache. And if you find this helpful, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. So let's get right into it because this is something that catches families completely off guard. And honestly, it happened to a viewer of mine last year, and her story is exactly why I wanted to make this video. Her father passed away, and within just a few days, she went to the bank to withdraw money for the funeral home, and the teller looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, this account is frozen." No warning, no letter in the mail, nothing. Just frozen. And here's the thing that really shook her. The funeral was in 3 days, and she had absolutely no way to pay for it because every single dollar her father had saved was sitting there, completely locked, completely inaccessible, and nobody at the bank could tell her exactly when it would be unlocked again. Now, why does this even happen? Most people assume that once you pass away, your money just quietly transfers to whoever is listed as next of kin, or whoever is handling the estate. But that's not how it actually works, and that misunderstanding is exactly what causes so much heartbreak. When someone dies, the Social Security Administration is often notified almost immediately, sometimes within days, through what's called the Death Master File. This is essentially a massive database that gets updated the moment a death is reported, whether that's through a funeral home, a hospital, or a family member calling Social Security directly. And once that information exists, banks and financial institutions can access it too, and many of them do, as part of routine fraud prevention. Here's why banks do this. It's not because they're trying to be difficult or heartless, even though it feels that way in the moment. Banks freeze accounts to protect the estate from unauthorized withdrawals. Think about it from their perspective. The second an account holder passes away, that money legally becomes part of their estate, and it's supposed to be distributed according to a will, or according to state law if there isn't one. If the bank just let anyone walk in and start withdrawing cash, they'd be opening the door to fraud, family disputes, and even lawsuits. So to protect themselves, and technically to protect the estate, they lock everything down until the proper legal process is followed. But here's the part that nobody explains clearly, and it's the reason so many families end up stuck. There is a way to prevent this freeze from happening, or at the very least, to get through it much faster, and it comes down to paperwork that most people have never even heard of. Depending on your state, there's often a document called a small estate affidavit, and in many places, this form is completely free to file. It allows an heir or a family member to legally claim funds from a bank account without going through the long, expensive process of full probate court. Now, this isn't available in every single case. There are usually limits based on how much money is in the account, but for a huge number of everyday families, this one form is the difference between waiting weeks or even months and getting access to funds within just a few days. Let me explain why probate is such a nightmare in the first place. Because once you understand this, you'll understand exactly why this free form matters so much. Probate is the court-supervised process of validating a will, paying off debts, and distributing assets. And I want to be honest with you, friends, probate can take anywhere from a few months to over a year, depending on the state, the complexity of the estate, and honestly, how busy the local court system happens to be. During all of that time, if there's no faster alternative in place, the money in that person's individual bank account can just sit there, completely frozen, while bills pile up, funeral costs go unpaid, and family members are left scrambling to cover expenses out of their own pockets. Now here's something else that surprises a lot of people, and I think it's incredibly important to mention. Not every account actually gets frozen. If an account is set up as a joint account with rights of survivorship, meaning two people's names are both on it, that account typically passes directly to the surviving person without going through this whole freeze and wait process. Similarly, if someone had set up what's called a payable-on-death designation, sometimes called a POD, or a transfer-on-death designation, the money in that account can go directly to the named beneficiary almost immediately, often within just a matter of days, with a death certificate and a little paperwork at the bank. This is honestly one of the simplest, most overlooked pieces of financial planning, and it costs absolutely nothing to set up while someone is still alive. So here's the real problem. And I want you to really sit with this for a second. Most people don't set these things up in advance because nobody thinks about death paperwork until it's too late. We're all busy living our lives, and talking about what happens after we're gone feels uncomfortable, even a little morbid. But that discomfort is exactly what leaves families in these frozen account situations, scrambling at the worst possible moment when they're already grieving, already overwhelmed, and now suddenly forced to become paperwork experts overnight, just to access money that should have been simple to get. Now let's talk about what you should actually do if you find yourself in this situation, because I don't want this video to just scare you. I want it to genuinely help you. The very first step, as soon as a loved one passes away, is to get several certified copies of the death certificate. I always recommend getting more than you think you'll need, because you'll be surprised how many institutions ask for an original certified copy, not just a photocopy. Banks, insurance companies, pension providers, they all want their own certified version, and running back and forth trying to get one more copy every single time is exhausting when you're already dealing with grief. The second step is contacting the bank directly, as early as possible, rather than waiting for them to figure it out on their own. I know that sounds strange, because you'd think reporting a death to the bank would speed up the freeze, but in reality, being proactive puts you in control of the process instead of being blindsided by it weeks later. When you contact the bank, ask them directly what their specific procedure is for releasing funds, and ask whether your state's small estate affidavit applies to this account. Every state has different thresholds for what qualifies as a small estate, so what works in one state might not apply the same way in another, and this is exactly why it's worth asking directly rather than assuming. The third step, and this one is often missed, is checking whether the deceased had named any beneficiaries or set up any payable-on-death arrangements that the family didn't know about. Sometimes people set these things up years earlier and simply forgot to mention it, or maybe they told one family member, but not everyone else. So it's worth asking the bank directly whether any such designation exists on file, because if it does, that account might not even be part of the frozen estate process at all, and funds could be released far faster than you expect. Now, I also want to address something that comes up constantly in the comments whenever I talk about this topic, and that's Social Security payments specifically. If your loved one was receiving Social Security benefits, it's critical to understand that Social Security must be notified of the death as quickly as possible, and in most cases, funeral homes handle this notification directly with Social Security. But it's still worth confirming this yourself rather than assuming it's been taken care of. Here's why this matters so much. Social Security payments are made for the month before they're received, meaning if someone passes away partway through a month, the payment for that month is not something the family is entitled to keep. If a payment is deposited after death, and it turns out the person wasn't alive for that entire benefit period, Social Security can and will reclaim that payment directly from the account, which is actually one of the reasons banks freeze accounts so quickly once a death is reported through that federal database I mentioned earlier. I know this is a lot of information, and if you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now, that's completely normal, because this system was never designed to be simple or intuitive for grieving families. It was designed by institutions for institutional protection, and unfortunately, the emotional side of losing someone rarely gets factored into how efficiently these processes run. That's exactly why I make videos like this one, because I truly believe that if more people understood these systems before they needed them, so much unnecessary stress could be avoided during what's already one of the hardest times in a person's life. So let me bring this back to something practical you can do today, even if nobody in your life has passed away recently. If you're managing your own finances, or helping an aging parent manage theirs, take a few minutes this week to check whether their accounts have beneficiary designations set up. Call the bank, ask directly, does this account have a payable-on-death beneficiary listed? It usually takes less than 15 minutes to set one up, and it costs nothing. Yet it can save your family from months of frozen funds, legal headaches, and financial stress down the road. I really cannot stress enough how much of a difference this one small step makes, because I've heard from so many families who wish someone had told them this before it was too late. I also want to gently remind you that laws vary quite a bit from state to state, and financial institutions can have their own internal policies on top of that. So nothing I'm sharing here should replace an actual conversation with your bank or with an estate attorney. If the situation is more complicated, especially if there's a larger estate involved, multiple heirs who disagree, or debts that need to be settled first. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just someone who genuinely cares about helping families avoid these painful surprises. And my goal with this channel has always been to translate confusing systems into something real people can actually understand and use. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, I want you to know that just understanding this information puts you ahead of probably 90% of people who will only learn about this the hard way in the middle of a crisis, standing at a bank counter being told their money is frozen. And that's really the heart of what John Retires is all about, not waiting until something goes wrong to figure out how these systems work, but getting ahead of it now, while there's still time to make simple, smart decisions that protect the people we love. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one more thought, because I think it's honestly the most important part of this entire conversation. Money conversations with aging parents, or even with our own spouses, can feel uncomfortable, even a little taboo. Nobody wants to sit down and talk about what happens when they die. But avoiding that conversation doesn't prevent death from happening. It only prevents preparation from happening. And preparation is the entire difference between a family that handles a loss with a clear plan and a family that's blindsided, frozen out of their own money, right when they need it most. So if this video gave you even one piece of information you didn't know before, do me a huge favor and hit that like button, because it genuinely helps this channel reach more families who need to hear exactly this. And if you haven't already subscribed, now is the perfect time, because I'm covering these kinds of overlooked financial and social security topics every single week. The stuff that banks and government agencies never sit down and explain to you directly. Turn on those notifications too, so you don't miss the next video, because trust me, there's a lot more of these hidden traps I plan to walk you through. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire video. I know it was a lot of information, but I truly believe it's information that can protect your family when it matters most. And I'll see you in the very next one.